Hey guys, what's up? It's Ryan Hartney with Sufmato Real Estate. Today we're going to be going over the Florida as-is contract. Just a quick rundown. Feel free to share this with your buyers if they have questions about the contract. If you're new to real estate and need to learn how to fill out a contract, this is perfect for you. This is the Florida as-is. We're going to just go through this real quick. First page is most important, so we're just going to pull up MLS, click on our property appraiser tax ID link. If you don't have MLS, you can just go through the county property appraiser and usually search by address to find all the pertinent info. First page, seller, buyer. Seller's name you can find on the property appraiser. Buyer's name would be whoever's buying the property. Address, pretty self-explanatory. County, tax ID. Most counties have tax ID numbers for each of their properties. It's almost like a social security number. So we're going to make sure we copy and paste that in, and then copy and paste the legal description in the appropriate place as well. One thing to catch on these contracts, especially on page one under personal property, this is going to include everything in the house that's going to convey that might not be connected, i.e., blinds, windows, any furniture, anything like that the buyer wants. One thing that's often not included is the washer and dryer. You want to make sure you have washer and dryer included if the washer and dryer is conveyed. It is not included in this appliance section within this paragraph. Purchase price, pretty self-explanatory. We're at $450,000 on this house. Escrow, usually recommended around 1%. Lower the better for your buyer. Title company information, you're going to want to fill that in so the lender and everyone knows who's on first base as far as title goes. One trick that I picked up over the years is just fill in balance on the balance to close. When you're countering and going back and forth on contract negotiations and you're scratching out numbers and redoing the math, mistakes occur. If you just keep balance here, the balance is always the balance, and you don't need to redo numbers when you fill in 80% financing and then the price changes and you've got to go back and recalculate it every time. So balance is usually sufficient in that regard. Acceptance, you're always going to want to put the day you send the contract over for acceptance or the next day, within 24 hours. For cash transactions, you can usually close within 7 days. Financing, which is how we're going to do this offer, you want to have 30 days. I'm going to skip over some things just for sake of time, just hit the highlights. If there's a lease on the property, you want to make sure you have all the lease documents. Occupancy and possession, basically the properties could be conveyed without furniture in or whatever. It's going to be clean. It's not going to be, full of crap. Assignability is important. 9 times out of 10 for a standard real estate transaction, you're going to click not assignable. You'll see and hear a lot about wholesaling. Those wholesalers are going to click it's going to be assigned because they're going to try to sell that contract to another investor and take an acquisitions fee or an assignment fee for putting that deal under contract. But for a standard real estate transaction where you're earning a commission and doing the run-of-the-mill type work as a realtor, you're not going to assign the contract. You check cash if you're paying cash, and financing if you're getting financing. Pretty simple, stupid. You need to check what kind of loan it is, conventional, FHA, or VA, or an other. You're going to always pretty much hit fixed for the rate. The rest you don't really need to fill in. 30-year financing is pretty normal. If it is 15, though, you do need to clarify that it's 15-year and not 30. This goes on to say that is the buyer's, responsibility to get the loan and make sure they're doing everything they're supposed to do to get the loan secured and keep the seller informed. If the seller isn't informed, they can raise a red flag and ask for updates, and the buyer really needs to be responsible for doing that and getting the loan done. Closing costs is important. This goes into all the closing costs which will be paid by each party. One thing just to note in here, if you're asking for the seller to contribute to closing costs, this is a good place to write it in. It's just sellers contributing 3% towards buyer's closing costs and prepaids. Closing costs of the buyers is really limited to really the lender fees, loan expenses, recording fees for the loan, owner's policy for the lender's title policy, survey. You can't ask for the seller to pay for closing costs. Usually I tell the buyer to expect around maybe just under 3% of the loan value to be spent on closing costs. So, if you're a first-time realtor, you're going to want to make sure your buyers are prepared, for the closing costs on top of the down payment. Title evidence will be taken care of by the title insurance company. They'll get over a title commitment. and they will clear up any issues that arise. So as long as you're getting a title commitment, you're okay. This is where that is explained. Um, we're checking seller to designate the closing agent and pay for owner's policy. You're always, going to have an owner's policy on a transaction at least 99% of the time. It just depends on who pays for it. It's a little under 1% of the purchase price. The thing about the owner's policy, whoever pays for the policy typically gets to pick who's handling the closing. So just something to think about. Miami-Dade, we're going to skip. Survey, the buyer is okay to get a survey. Home warranty, not something I recommend to my clients, but if you are going to get one, you need to fill in who's going to issue the policy and how much the seller and or buyer is going to pay for it. Usually they're about $600, $500. Special assessments only has to do with condos, at least in most cases. This just basically means that any assessments, like for a condo roof or a paint job or something like that, we need to know about that before closing, and we need to decide who's paying for it. Under this circumstance, it would be seller will be paying for it. Rate on gas, we'll skip. Permits disclosure, again, just any open permits need to be disclosed. Mold, we can do a mold test as a buyer if we want to. Flood elevation, you just need to make sure as a realtor or just as a buyer, if you're buying in a flood zone or not. You really should know that before you look at a house in the first place. Let's see. FIRPTA, Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act, is for foreign sellers and buyers. They do need to pay tax to the federal government when they sell. This goes on to explain that. The title company will take care of any FIRPTA that it runs its course. Seller's disclosure. Seller needs to disclose anything they know about the property that could be, anything wrong with it. If down the road something comes up, there is recourse there if you can prove that the seller knew about it. This is the most important part here is the inspection period. We're putting 3 days here because we know we can get a quick inspection done. Typically, you're probably going to want to do around 10 for a standard realtor buyer. Enough time to hire the inspector, have them get out there, put together the report, and then, this is an as-is contract. You're buying it as is, but 9 times out of 10, the buyer's agent is going to take the inspection report and renegotiate either a credit or repairs based on how the report goes. You just need to have that repair request and or cancellation in before the third or call it the 10th day in order to keep your buyer's escrow safe under this provision. Walkthrough basically means you can do a walkthrough before closing. Seller assistance, they need to help close any building permits that come up as a result of the title search. Escrow agent talks about the title company's responsibilities. Buyer default, if the buyer fails to put in escrow or fails in some way, the escrow goes back to the seller. So, you need to make sure that, your buyers, I always tell my clients, I'll never put you in a position where your escrow is at risk. So just make sure that, especially with the loan, your buyer is performing and getting the application in within 5 days, getting the loan commitment within 30 days, or whatever the financing contingency paragraph says. Seller default basically says the buyer has recourse to go after the seller if the seller agrees to sell and then decides they're going to change their mind. Happens more often than you think. There is recourse there as part of this Florida as-is contract for your clients. Dispute resolution basically says that everything goes to mediation before it goes to court. This talks about the costs associated with that. Don't get yourself in trouble. Follow the contract. You'll never have an issue. Let's see. Title examination. Really, most of this stuff is going to be handled by the title company. You're just going to want to make sure you're getting a bona fide title commitment and title insurance policy. If they can't do that, you better not be closing on this property. Let's see. Ingress, egress, self-explanatory. Lease information. Not hugely important. A lot of this stuff not really hugely important, except if you're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the contract. Force majeure, if any hurricanes, earthquakes, plagues, coronavirus, whatever comes up, there is extensions that are built into the contract as a result of those things happening. Closing location has to do with the title company, documents. Again, a lot of this stuff doesn't really become pertinent unless there's really major issues or you really screw up. Prorations, you're going to have tax prorations, you're going to have HOA prorations. Basically any fees that have been paid or are to be paid are going to be prorated at closing based on the time, the contract was executed, or by the time the contract closes. So if it's $1,000 tax bill, it's going to be split, based on the closing date over a year period. Let's see, that's about it. I hope you covered everything you need just to kind of get your first contract filled out. It's not supposed to be a very in-depth video, just give you an idea what to look out for. Look out for your addendums. Make sure you got your lead-based paint. Make sure if you're buying as a licensed realtor, you disclose that under Florida law. That needs to be disclosed. Usually I do an addendum and I put it in the additional notes just to make sure I'm covered. Make sure you write yourself in for your commission. Write in the listing agent for their commission. You can put the percentage there if it makes you feel more comfortable. That's it. Pretty simple. Inbox me if you have any questions. Have a great day. See ya.